Welcome. You're here because you want to get straight to the heart of important issues, and today we're doing just that. We're taking a deep dive into the state of public transport in Sri Lanka. Our guide is a really compelling article by Sasanka De Silva called Who Will Tame the Beasts on Our Roads?
Hmm.
And what this piece really exposes is, well, a crisis. And the daily commute isn't just inconvenient, it's become genuinely perilous. Unsafe conditions, reckless driving, and seemingly very little accountability.
Yeah, it really paints a stark picture from the get-go.
So, our mission today is to unpack the core problems De Silva identifies and look at the potential ways forward that the article suggests.
Right, and the article, it doesn't pull any punches. It starts by describing the reality for commuters as, frankly, dangerous. We're talking about what De Silva calls a daily trauma.
Daily trauma. Yeah.
Endured in filthy, overcrowded, and dangerously maintained buses. It really sets the scene for a system that's, fundamentally failing its users.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to stress this isn't just about discomfort, is it? The author uses this really strong phrase, calls public transport a moving hazard.
That's right, a moving hazard, not a service, a hazard. And that feeling, according to the article, comes directly from the driver behavior, treating public roads, quote, like racetracks.
Like racetracks, yeah.
Mhm.
It just screams a lack of concern for passenger safety, doesn't it?
Totally. And what also comes through really strongly is the impact on just basic human dignity. De Silva describes people having to, cling to handrails for dear life,
Right.
enduring ear splitting music, breathing in noxious exhaust fumes just to get from A to B. It really shows how the system can strip away people's dignity.
It sounds awful. And the article makes it clear there are real, tangible consequences, right? Frequent accidents.
Oh, yes. De Silva mentions the frequent reports dangerous overtaking, running red lights, and inevitably collisions. It seems like a cycle where, because there's little enforcement, the risky behavior just continues.
It's a vicious cycle. So, okay, we have this picture of a failing, dangerous system. Where does De Silva say the breakdown is happening? Why does it persist?
Well, a huge part of it, according to the article, is a failure of enforcement and accountability. De Silva makes a pretty serious observation about the Sri Lanka police, suggesting their focus might often be more on extracting bribes than enforcing the law, which, if true, means traffic violations just go unchecked. That's a major breakdown in the system right there.
Wow, that's a heavy accusation. It points to a real institutional problem if the enforcers aren't enforcing.
Exactly. And it seems this lack of effective action extends upwards, too. Even when horrific accidents happen, the political response is often lacking.
How so?
Well, De Silva critiques what he sees as sort of performative responses. The teary-eyed statements from politicians, the promises of inquiries.
Ah, the inquiries that never seem to lead anywhere.
Precisely. They ultimately lead nowhere, is the argument. And De Silva puts it bluntly, systemic change. Nowhere in sight. It just reinforces this feeling of kind of inertia.
Right. So if the problems are so obvious and the consequences so severe, what's stopping real change? What are the underlying blockers?
De Silva points to two main things, really. One is what he calls political cowardice.
Political cowardice.
Yeah, basically a reluctance to tackle the problem head on, and this is compounded by the significant influence of public transport unions, especially those connected to the state-run operator, the SLTB.
Ah, the union factor. So governments are afraid of the backlash.
That's the argument. The fear of upsetting these powerful unions, particularly, around election time, means that tough decisions about accountability just get pushed back indefinitely.
Okay, that makes sense, unfortunately. We see that dynamic elsewhere, too. Fear of disruption versus the need for safety. So faced with this deadlock, does De Silva actually suggest any practical solutions? Anything concrete?
Yes, he does. He puts forward a pretty interesting policy idea. directly linking a driver's license to the vehicle's insurance premiums.
Okay, link the license to the insurance. How would that work? What's the mechanism?
The basic idea is to create an economic disincentive for bad driving. So, if a driver wraps up violations, their insurance costs go up significantly.
Right, hitting them in the pocket. But you said the vehicle's insurance, so it affects the owners too.
Exactly. That's key. De Silva suggests the higher premiums would fall on the bus owners, the transport companies.
I see.
So suddenly they have a very strong financial reason to be much more careful about who they hire. Employing drivers with bad records becomes expensive. It aligns the owner's financial interests with safety.
That's quite clever, actually, shifting responsibility financially onto the operators.
Uh-huh.
But I feel like there's a catch. Did the author mention any conditions for this to actually work?
Yes, a crucial one. De Silva is very clear. This policy only works if the government enforces it rigorously and, importantly, uniformly across the board, meaning it has to apply equally to the private bus operators and the state-run SLTB. No exceptions. If the state operator gets a pass, the whole thing becomes, in his words, toothless. Parity is essential.
Got it. So no loopholes for the state sector. It needs consistent universal enforcement. Okay, that makes sense. Now, beyond the specific insurance policy idea, does the article talk about sort of bigger shifts needed, cultural changes maybe?
Oh, absolutely. De Silva makes the point that this isn't just a technical problem you can solve with one law, it's also deeply political and cultural.
Right.
He argues there's a need to build a whole system, a whole culture where safety is incentivized and recklessness is punished, not just on paper, but in practice everywhere.
And how do you foster that kind of cultural shift? Does he suggest the public has a role?
Definitely. He talks about the power of civic activism, consumer pressure, and consistent media coverage. Basically, people demanding better, reporting bad behavior, using the media to shame authorities into action, as he puts it.
So, bottom-up pressure is vital. What about technology? Does that feature in the potential solutions?
Yes, it does. He mentions things like GPS tracking in buses, speed governors to limit speeding, and maybe even public dashboards where people can easily log complaints and see operator safety records, using tech for transparency and accountability.
Interesting. Using tech to keep everyone honest. There was also something about new players entering the market.
Yeah, another interesting angle. De Silva suggests actively supporting young entrepreneurs with a vision for safe, efficient travel, helping them start new, perhaps smaller, model transport services.
How would that support work?
He floats ideas like government grants or maybe low interest loans to help these new entrants get started.
Right, so the idea is these new services could set a different standard, maybe clean, punctual, and professionally managed, as the article suggests.
Exactly. Inject some competition based on quality and safety, not just cutting corners. And he also mentions using tech platforms, maybe apps, to connect these new services directly with passengers, bypassing some of the old chaotic structures.
Okay, so it's kind of a dual approach, trying to reform the existing system while also encouraging new, better alternatives to emerge. The article really builds towards a powerful conclusion, doesn't it? Bring it back to the human cost.
It really does. De Silva argues very strongly that this whole issue, it isn't just about buses running on time or being less crowded. It's a fundamental battle for our collective dignity and safety.
Dignity and safety, that puts it starkly.
And he issues this call to action, basically, to stop normalizing death and disorder on our roads, to stop accepting this as just the way things are.
And that final line, it really sticks with you. Until someone dares to tame the beasts, we will all remain at their mercy. The chilling warning, really.
It absolutely is. It underlines the urgency and just how high the stakes are in tackling these deep-seated problems in Sri Lanka's public transport. It's not a minor issue, it's critical.
So, wrapping up our deep dive into Sasanka De Silva's article, We've seen a picture of a public transport system in deep trouble. Uh, Unsafe conditions, lack of accountability, tangled up with politics and union power.
Hmm.
But we've also looked at potential paths forward. Policy tweaks like the insurance link, the vital role of public pressure and maybe civic activism, and this idea of fostering new, safer transport options.
And the core message throughout is that this is fundamentally about ensuring public safety and basic human dignity for everyone who needs to get around. It's not just about logistics.
Absolutely. It leaves you thinking, doesn't it, about the power we might have collectively or even individually to demand better, safer systems, not just in Sri Lanka, but anywhere that safety or dignity is compromised. It prompts the question, really. What's one small step you, listening now, could take to advocate for or support positive change, whether it's in transport or another area where things need to improve, something to mull over?